All right, this is going to be the first video for Note 61. We're going to start talking about distance and midpoint. Up at the top of your note sheet, there is a distance formula. Distance formula is based off of Pythagorean theorem. We will talk about that more later. And midpoint formula, there is this lovely formula here, but what it boils down to is you're going to take the average of your x's and the average of your y's, and that's going to get your midpoint. So let's get into a couple problems here. Problem number one, first thing I want you to do is to graph the point A, which is 3, 4. So we, of course, are going to start at the origin, positive 3, so 1, 2, 3 to the right, and then positive 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 up. I'll put a little point right there, and I will go ahead and label it point A. Separately, we're going to graph point B, which is negative 1, negative 2. So going back to the origin, I'm going to go to the left 1, so that's negative 1 on the x, and then down 2, so moving down to the negative 2. And I will put a point right there and label that point B. Now, the first thing I want to find is the midpoint. So midpoint formula says I'm going to take the x values. So the x value is the 3 and the negative 1. I'm going to add those and divide by 2. And then separately, I'm going to take the y values, so the 4 and the negative 2. I am going to add those, so 4 plus negative 2 divided by 2. And that will create, whenever I simplify this, whatever my midpoint is. So dealing with the x values, 3 plus negative 1 is 2. 2 over 2 is simply 1. All right, so now we have an x value. For the y values, 4 plus negative 2 is 2. 2 over 2 is also 1. I don't know why I wrote that 1 differently, so let me make that the normal one. And here's the thing, it's not required, but if you were to graph the point 1, 1, so let me go ahead and do that. So 1, 1, it basically looks like it's halfway between those 2 points. Now, again, not 100%, needed, not required or anything, but it's always a good idea to check. So had I done my math and had I gotten something like 1, negative 3, and I go, oh, well, here's 1, here's negative 3. If I have a midpoint down here, that makes no sense, right? This point is definitely not halfway between A and B. So midpoint has been calculated. Let me go ahead and put a little pretty little green box around it. Now, distance formula. This is the distance formula. It looks lovely. Basically, you are looking at I keep saying basically, but it's Pythagorean theorem based off of, I meant to be in highlighter mode. If you were to draw a right triangle here, okay, and then find the difference in your x's and find the difference in the y's, you create the two legs of the Pythagorean of the right triangle. So for Pythagorean theorem, then you could do leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. And so that's where you come up with this difference in the x's squared plus the differences in the y's squared. Now, why is there a big square root over everything? Well, remember Pythagorean theorem, that is the hypotenuse squared. So if you want just the hypotenuse, you would have to take the square root, okay? So if we actually use distance formula, all right, and I'm going to put distance here. So distance, I can spell. So, all right, let's go. D is equal to big old square root, because I write huge. All right, so my first x is 3 minus my second x is negative 1. Now be very careful with the double negative. So you have a minus sign, I have a minus sign, and then the second x value is a negative. So it is minus a negative. And that's going to be squared plus first y is 4 minus second y is negative 2. Again, a double negative. All right, so this is looking lovely. Let's go ahead and simplify. So big old square root. So 3 minus negative 1 is really 3 plus 1, which is going to be 4 squared. 4 minus negative 2 is 4 plus 2, so it's going to be 6 squared. Let's see, so 4 squared is 16, 6 squared is 36. Yep, okay. So then, let's see, 16 plus 36 is going to be 52. Doing the math in my head. Yep, that's correct. And then one of the things that we had you guys doing first semester was to simplify square roots. Okay, so off to the side here, if I deal with 52, let's see what we got here. So how can I break up a 52? Let's go with 2 and 26. And then 26 would be 2 and 13. So 2, 2, and 13 means that I have a pair of 2s and a 13. So distance is equal to 2 root 13. We don't have units here, so that's where I'm just going to stop and say that distance is 2 root 13. Okay. All right, so that is the entirety of part 1. So first things first was we graphed the points. So I gave you a little grid to graph those. Found the midpoint of AB. We found the midpoint and the distance between the 2 points. We found the distance. So we've got all the points, all the problem covered there. All right, so then problem number 2. Let's see. If one endpoint of a line segment is -3, 5, and the midpoint is 6, 8, what is the other endpoint of the segment? Okay, so I'm telling you what the midpoint is, and I've given you one endpoint. All right, so when we look at our midpoint formula, I'm going to write it out here really quickly. So we've got x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. Okay, so I've given you the x value and a y value, and I've told you what they end up equaling. So let's do a little substitution here. So x1, that's going to be my endpoint, is going to be -3 plus x2, I don't know what that is, over 2 is equal to the x value of the midpoint. So it's going to be equal to 6. Now, this is fabulous. How do you solve this thing? Well, let's go ahead and multiply by 2. So -3 plus my second x is going to equal to 12. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So my second x value is going to be 15. And I'm going to do the exact same setup with the y value. So my first y value, the one endpoint I know is 5, plus my second y, I don't know what that is, over 2 has to equal 8. All right, so the y value here is my y value here. That's the endpoint. And then the midpoint, I'm telling you the midpoint is 8. All right, so let's go ahead and multiply both sides by 2. So 5 plus the second y is equal to 16. Let's go ahead and subtract 5. I don't know what I just wrote there. There's the 5. So my second y is equal to 11. So I'm looking at an other endpoint that would be 15, comma 11. All right, what you could do is quickly double check. If I take -3 plus 15, I get 12. Half of 12 is 6. Cool, my x values work. If I take 5 plus 11, I get 16. Half of 16 is 8. All right, I am in the good place. I like this. All right, and speaking of good places, this is going to be a good place for me to go ahead and stop this video. So we've covered question 1 and question 2 on distance and midpoint formulas. I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here. As always, please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and I'll pop up a second video for question number 3.